Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Things are beginning to heat up more and more inside of Syria, and the things we've been reporting on seem to be very evident that they're about to come to pass in the very near future, no doubt. Latest reports that we're getting, this is on LevantTimes.com. Russian special forces have arrived in southern Syria after U.S. airstrike on an army convoy. Now, the place that they've actually arrived at is called the place called Al-Suwaid. That just give you a quick idea on the map here. Taking a look right here, Al-Suwaid is right here in this area here. Just over here is where, right across this area here, you can't even see the road on this map the way I got it blown up right now. But right here is the road that crosses over into where Al-Tanf is inside Syria. In fact, let me back out just a little bit here. It's a little bit further away than that. I apologize for that. But anyway, U.S. forces are in this region right here. They've already crossed over into the Syria side here. There is U.S. forces down here along with British. We also know that Norwegian forces, Special Operations Forces, crossed over into this area here, according to reports that are coming there out of the Middle East there. Now let me back out just a little bit more because I want you to get a better idea of what's going on here in the country here from what we're seeing ourselves. We're going to be talking a little bit about Deir el-Zor right here. You also have Al-Raqqa up here more to the northern part of the country here, and of course the river here that runs through the country of Syria right here. This river seems to be the dividing line, according to Russian generals that are saying that the U.S. is trying to control the eastern side of this property, whereas Russia is trying to control the western half of this. But at this point right now, we're dealing with some other issues that are happening in here. Let's kind of look at what we got going on here. One of those issues happens to be that today Russia unleashed the Caliber cruise missiles. 4 of those cruise missiles they sent towards Palmyra. Now, going back to our map right here, Palmyra happens to be right here, pretty much the midway point between Damascus to the west. You have Homs up here, but Palmyra, follow the road on down, goes into Damascus. Let me just kind of share that with you so you can see that a little bit better. We have Damascus down here, straight back over to Deir el-Zor. And of course, Deir el-Zor being supplied by Damascus. This is also where Syria's airfield is that deals with all the fighting here to the east of the country. And we'll kind of zoom in on that so you can see that. There it is right there, the Deir el-Zor airport. This is the very runway right here that the Syrian military has been using in order to fight ISIS, to fight the militants, to fight the Free Syrian Army, etc. And this is something that the U.S. coalition would like to be able to take out, but they don't want to take it out directly because then that would look like that they have engaged in a battle directly with the Syrian military, something that could draw Russia into the conflict. And that's only a probability. That's not an absolute that would happen. Iran, no doubt it would definitely draw Iran into the battle. They've already promised that they would engage in the battle if that were to happen. I think that's something that President Trump would like to see happen because that would give him the opportunity to take down Iran, something that he figures is a major threat to the region, as well as Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu also feels that's a threat. But at this point right now, what are we looking at? It's interesting that the U.S. coalition is actually right in this area here, both on the Jordanian side and the Iraqi side, Palmyra right here. And of course, ISIS still trying to regain Palmyra, where the Syrian military has already taken this area back, but it's still under a threat of the ISIS forces. And of course, Russia taking out more of those ISIS forces. Now, we might think, well, that's something the U.S. would like to do as well. Well, maybe not. According to Sputnik News, they did an interview with Brigadier General Mohammed Isi, who is a Syrian Brigadier General, and he is stating, as they show here in this clip here, that, excuse me, not clip, we're just looking at a photo here, but that the U.S. military has been seen working with Daesh, been working with ISIS all along. Now, we know that President Obama, under his administration, the creation of ISIS was certainly something very much seen by many critics alike and different reporters reporters have all come to the conclusion that this is where the first beginning of the creation of ISIS all began. Even John McCain photographed seen with some of the very leaders of ISIS, this militant group that has been fighting all through the Middle East. And of course, it is believed that ISIS was created as a result of the disbanding of the Iraqi army. That's where the first stronghold of this force began at. Nonetheless, they continue to fight throughout the region inside of Syria, destabilizing it. We know that John Kerry's leaked audio says that the U.S. was watching ISIS as it gained control over Syria, waiting for them to take down Bashar al-Assad, and didn't do anything about it as a result, because that's exactly what they wanted in the end game. So, and not to mention the attack on Deir el-Zor. If you remember, last year, the U.S. coalition struck for over an hour targets inside of there. It did kill Russian special forces, something that Russia has never admitted to. But some 80-something military personnel were killed. 60-something were Syrian military, but there was about a dozen special forces from the Russian side that were also involved in the deaths there. This is one reason why Russia retaliated, striking in the mountains of Aleppo, the command center that ended up killing secret agents from a multitude of countries, including that of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Israel, United States, and Turkey. So it's been very interesting how this has been going on from the very beginning. But now we see that Russia has moved their own special forces there after the U.S. did the strike there on the Levant Times. Says a military source confirmed that a group of Russian paratroopers and special forces have arrived in the southern province of Suaid after the U.S.-led coalition fighter jets targeted heavily a military convoy of the Syrian pro-government forces near the town of Al-Tanf at the border with Iraq. The source told Amman that the Russian military personnel are the region to advise the Syrian government troops in southern Syria, while also helping to deter any potential response from the U.S. Jordanian forces that have carved a niche in Suaid and Homs provinces. According to some of the media activists, the Russian forces are planning to build a base along the Suaid province border with Jordan. Now, that's not going to sit over too well. I can guarantee you that. I was already looking at an article earlier today from the Jordan news side as well, saying that Jordan will not accept any country that they feel to be a threat to their country, especially that of the Iran militias or even the Syrian military, some of their militias that are fighting along with them. But what if Russia builds the base? Interesting how that could end up going, no doubt. So anyway, U.S. seeks to prevent Syrian army control over the border with Iraq, and this is another article that brings that to light there, that the U.S. is there to stop Syria from being able to control that road that leads, as we were showing you. Let me just quickly jump that back over again. The road right here, Highway 1 inside of Iraq there, but that road, by the way, goes right straight to Baghdad, and that is something, a supply line that they do want to cut off between Syria and Iraq, something that why U.S. forces are there trying to control that access point, that nothing can go in or out from the country of Iraq inside of Syria. So it seems like that right now the U.S. coalition is working on cutting off supply lines in each direction, and may have some success in doing so. Also, another issue I'd like to share with you too, President Putin has also stated recently, of course he was highlighting Iran's important role in the Syrian ceasefire. Iran may have an important role in the ceasefire, but I will have to say, Iran being inside of Syria is certainly something that Israel is not taking very lightly. Prime Minister Netanyahu watching this situation very carefully, and no doubt if the U.S.-led coalition were to take down Damascus, I'm sure Israel will be right involved in that, as well if they were to get into any kind of confrontation with Iran. Israel no doubt will play a heavy part in that as well, that operation. I'm sure this is why the F-35s were delivered to Israel, not just for having some free gifts there, hardware to be sitting on the ground, but no doubt the U.S. is intending to utilize Israel's pilots in any type of a war with Iran to limit the amount of U.S. pilots that would be involved. But anyway, in this particular article right here, one thing that did catch my attention was that President Putin challenges the whole idea that the Syrian government ever used chemical weapons. Let's read what he actually says here. Moreover, I believe that the issue should be addressed on a broader scale. President Macron shares this view. No matter who uses chemical weapons against people's organizations, the international community must formulate a common policy and find a solution that would make impossible use of such weapons for anyone, the Russian leader stated there. Putin highlighted the role of an agreement to establish 4 de-escalation zones in Syria, free from fighting between Syrian government and rebels, and called it an extremely important milestone towards a political settlement. However, he added that those zones should not become a prototype for future territorial divisions in Syria. On the contrary, expect that these de-escalation zones, if the peace is established and the people who will be controlling them will cooperate, and the official Syrian authorities, the Russian president stated there. Let me back up. I actually passed what I was looking for in the article right here. It says, okay, here it is right here. The Russian president was asked about the Western claims that the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons against his own people. The Russian leader reiterated that the accusations were groundless and politically motivated. He reminded that when the alleged attack happened in the town of Khan Shakun in Syria's Idlib province on April the 4th, Moscow called on Washington and other interested parties to send inspectors to the Syrian airfield from where the alleged chemical weapons originated, as well as to the site of the bombings. However, both Russian proposals were refused by the Western partners, Putin said, adding, if any chemical weapons were used by the President al-Assad's official agencies, modern verification equipment would certainly find traces of this. Interesting. So he says here that, in my opinion, the accusations have been made for the sole purpose of justifying the use of additional measures, including military ones, against Assad. That is all. There is no proof that Assad has used chemical weapons, he states. We firmly believe that this is a provocation. President Assad did not use chemical weapons, he said. So that was President Putin's stance on that. Very interesting to see that. Also, RT is reporting that Turkey blasts U.S. for extremely dangerous for arming the Kurds in Syria. I actually think that was a very good thing that the United States did. These people here have fought so bravely against ISIS forces, which kind of leaves some wondering, though, if the United States is backing ISIS secretly, and as President Putin is suggesting that they are, then why would the U.S. arm the Kurds who are fighting against ISIS? But there was one thing that was very interesting in the article over here, though, that speaks about the U.S.'s involvement with ISIS, and that's according to General Mohammed Isi. He does make the statement that any time the U.S. tells them that they must move, any of the factions, and you got to keep in mind there are many factions to ISIS, not just all of them are ISIS per se of one particular group, but there are factions inside of this group called ISIS. But at any rate, General Mohammed Isi made the comment that when the U.S. says for one of their groups to move, they move. And he said there is no battle whatsoever. So perhaps there are factions that are not loyal to the U.S. and they are willing to fight to the death. Well, in that case, the U.S. can arm the Kurds and send them in, and they will definitely drive out ISIS. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Shalom, and have a good evening.